Dwayne Johnson.
Hey everybody. Oh, it's good to see you. You guys like the movie?
I like this lady in the front. You're good.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This is great.
Yeah.
So much of this movie draws from John Hyam's documentary of the same name. Mark, my first question is for you. I want to know what you were thinking when you agreed to do the documentary, and if you could even imagine where we would be in this crazy world, 20 years later.
Oh, first, thank you for having me here. This is one of these. Thank you. So when the documentary originally got made, they started filming in 1999. They stopped filming about 18 months, almost 2 years later, and then it took another couple of years to edit it. And I didn't see one stitch of footage. I didn't see a single stitch of footage. And so the first time that I saw the complete documentary piece was in California. It was at the Dolby Sound Studios. There was 8 of us sitting in a theater, and I watched it, and I popped up out of my seat with this expression of what the fuck did I just do? And it was like the first time really absorbing, what I was about to put out in the world was really difficult, and so John had called me, wanted to make sure I was okay, and I said, hey, just give me a day. I hadn't signed a release for anything we had agreed upon, hey, if I final veto over it, if I didn't like it, or so he had said just simply, if this film could save one person's life, you've lived a worthy life. So that's what I just went, okay, I'll let this go out into the world, and then it ended up right here.
I was going to say in 2019, I talked to Mark, and that was when we were going to make the announcement, and I had I saw the documentary back in the early 2000s, and much like Mark said to John, okay, I remember when we spoke and things were happening so rapidly, I said, Mark, we're going to make the announcement tonight in Madison Square Garden. There's a big UFC fight happening, and I'm going to make the announcement that we're going to make a movie about your life. Same thing. Yeah. Not kidding, he went, okay. He was very concerned. And then I said, do you trust me?
Yeah.
And he said,
I said yes, and I do.
And here we are.
Yeah.
And then 2019 is when I approached Benny to do the movie, because I just watched Uncut Gems. And, wow, yeah, what a movie.
We get a call from Dwayne Johnson with this incredible story. He wants you to be part of it. Talk to me about that excitement, and then we're going to very quickly cut off that excitement with what happened right after.
Well, yeah. Well, it at that moment, it's like, trying to move this. Sorry. It's you. I was so excited because I didn't know what to expect. When I was going to meet Dwayne, because you have certain preconceived notions of who he's going to be. Is he going to be like what you think he is? All this stuff. And the moment that we got on this, the meeting, the Zoom opened, I was just like, oh my God, this guy there's something there. And it was this unspoken thing. And the more he was talking, the more I was like, oh my God, yeah. And then this, and then there were things that I could relate to that were just really, it was like a deep connection there. And but at the same time, it's like when somebody approaches you with something, you're always a little bit like you don't know what it's going to be. You have no clue if it's going to line up with what you want. And when I saw this documentary, I had the same exact feeling with when I saw Mark in the documentary. I just was like, I feel like I understand this guy, and I feel like this is just something that I have to do. You know, there was just something really important in trying to understand his world and his life and do it in a way that hopefully gets out to as many people as possible, because in the process of making this movie, we all learn something by living this life and feeling the feelings, you know, and I think that there was just something really special about this idea of this guy, Mark right here, being so vulnerable, finding strength in that vulnerability. And then on top of that, not allowing his sadness or hurt to define himself and still be this like beautiful, happy, and just like look back and say, you know, I'm okay. And that's the best.
So you guys are connecting, you're sort of raring to go, and then, you know, life gets in the way. It's 2019, and then it's 2020.
Yeah, then COVID happens, and then the world just kind of stops, and then things just get in the way. Projects come up, projects go away, and I just had this, again, it was like I had these screen grabs of Mark in the Nautica sweater, you know? And it was,
I got one of those today.
Yes, you did? Yes, okay. And I think now you finally, you have the one from the movie, but I remember seeing that, and I just would look at it, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I found a version of it, and I was so upset it wasn't exactly the same, but it was one with a blue stripe, and I got it dry cleaned, and then I wrote a letter to Dwayne, just saying, like, look, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know where we are right now. I said, but when the time comes that you have to become Mark, whether I'm there or whether I'm not, I don't know like how these things play out. I said, well, you can put this on, and hopefully that'll help you become the person, you know? And sweater, somebody has it.
Never made it.
But it never made it, but it was really, again, it just spoke to this idea that there was something that kept telling me, like, run towards that, you know?
Emily knows what I'm going to ask about now. You said the sweater. We don't know if Dwayne's gotten the sweater, but a couple years later, you were in New Mexico filming Oppenheimer with Emily Blunt, a wonderful actress, Dwayne's best friend.
Wonderful is a little bit of an understatement.
She is a force.
You guys ran into each other in the makeup trailer, and Benny, what did you say to her?
The first thing I said is, you're friends with Dwayne, right? And she goes, yes. And I said, I need to know if he got the sweater. Because I really,
She's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Exactly. I was like 500 steps ahead of the game, because clearly I was like waiting for this moment to reconnect, you know? Because it really, because what I had written down there, I put so much thought into, and then when we finally did get connected, it was like, we both kind of were like, you know, like there was like this deep exhale of finally getting reconnected, and then as we were talking about it, and I was kind of writing the script, adapting it for the documentary, and talking to Mark, and realizing that this relationship that they have is very complicated, and it's one that is not, you can't really put it in, you can, but it's one that I think a lot of people have had, or there have been versions in your own lives that you've had those arguments, and it's when two people want to connect and maybe don't, you know, like, and I think that at that moment I was thinking, who can play Dawn? You know, who can actually embody this person? And I was watching these just normal videos of you and Dwayne, and I saw this deep kind of true friendship and care there, and I thought, it has to be Emily. And this was after she destroyed me with a half-second look in Oppenheimer. So I knew what she was capable of, you know, on like a micro scale. And so, but then I just knew that, like, because they have such a deep foundation, you can use that in the movie to kind of, you want to root for them, you want them to be together, but there's something stopping them, something, it's like the song, "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right," that kind of thing.
Emily, I know you watched the documentary, and your perspective on what we see of Dawn and what we don't see of her is really beautiful, and I think we see that feeling in performance. Can you talk a little bit about that and what was so exciting to you about the possibility of playing a whole other side of her that people had not seen?
Sure. I mean, I think when I saw the documentary, my instincts were that it was maybe made under the male gaze and that we didn't see behind closed doors. And as Mark will attest, with all of the pain and pent up rage and loneliness, and when Mark was going through, when he was really unraveling, she also was struggling with her own demons. So it's sort of a recipe for a relationship that was as passionate as it was destructive. And I felt when I first started speaking to Dawn, and she was very nervous at first, and I needed Mark to kind of advocate for me, because she was gun shy, because I don't think she felt the documentary revealed really truly what she'd shared with the guys making it. So I think it was my job to try to advocate for the full spectrum. And I think the relationship appealed because it just felt real, like unmovified, that someone can be your greatest love, they can be your entire safety net, and they can also be your complete undoing. And they can also be that within an hour. That felt very true to life, where you can have a loving moment and the next moment the doors are blowing off. And we might not all experience that amplification of what they did, but we've been her and we've been him. And I think it's a very complicated thing for a woman to live with a man who was such a dedicated athlete, such an extraordinary athlete, but whose life is on the line all the time, not just in the ring, but the rabbit hole of addiction. And she was in that cage with him, and she had her own demons too. And I do believe people do the best they can, given the givens, I do. And when I got to know her, and I learned what she was sort of marinated in her childhood, and such a gift for me. I mean, I've never had an opportunity to play someone who I can absorb and talk to and learn from. And so I respect her, because I knew and she knew that we were going to be portraying them during the most tumultuous times of their lives. And I think it took a lot of guts for them to open up to us. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. It's hard, by the way. I feel like I want to just give Emily her flowers, because it's a hard role to play. I've been there in my life, and for many of you who may not know, like, I come from a world of professional wrestlers. My dad.
No one knows that.
No one
It's so
knows.
weird.
You never know. Thank you. Okay. I don't want to assume. My dad will love that, right? And cheer for me. But I've seen that before, where the man in the house, the guy who's reaching for the thing, the brass ring, he's sacrificing everything. But the beauty about Emily's performance, and she is such a force, and I got a chance to experience that force. As you guys know, we did Jungle Cruise together. So that kind of, thank you very much. A couple of people saw it.
Thanks, Mom. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. But that was a different experience with Emily. But seeing Emily over the years, from Sicario to Oppenheimer to The English, I mean, all these roles where she plays this force. Now I got to experience that force as an actor on this movie, which is very powerful and very inspiring. But it's the humanity, I think, that Emily brings that's able to let the world know, now that you guys have seen the movie and we're out tonight and this weekend, is it's not just the guy who sacrifices everything, it's the wife who sacrifices everything too. But they don't get the credit and no one sees it because they're behind the scenes. Yeah, and that's what Emily was able to bring, and I experienced that. So you're welcome. I'll send you the bill. Go ahead, Kate.
But we would just to hop on this. I feel like you're settling in for more. The way that, like, these just overview, what was trying to do with the movie was, I wanted you to come to a certain conclusion at the end of it, but I didn't want to kind of tilt the scales too much so that I forced you into a certain place. I wanted you to come to the same conclusion with the same information that Mark had as he went through his life, because then that would make it that much more meaningful because it would come from inside. And that's when those kind of revelations are the most beautiful. And I'm going to tie that into the acting process because I feel that that's when the performances become even better, is when it comes from inside. And so we would be talking about the scenes I had written and the arguments, and I remember there was one moment where I said, I had written the line for Emily that like, oh, you give me leftovers and you tell me it's dinner time. And Emily was like, well, that's a little too perfect to say in that moment. And then I remember that like Mark had, like this is what was so amazing about working with Mark and Dawn was they were both so honest about the faults and the problems that they had with each other, you know, and that it gave us the ability to tell a truthful portrayal of that relationship on the screen. And so then from that conversations, we came up with the response that Dee said, oh, did you read that in one of your books? And it's not a nice thing to say, but it's something that you feel in that moment. And in those arguments, all you want to do is hurt the other person. And I don't know, you don't know why, but that's what you want to do because you feel you need to win. And it doesn't get you anywhere. And then you forget why the argument ever started. And so that just piles and piles and piles forward. And we wanted you to get caught up in that feeling of it so that you can make sense of it in some way. I don't know. It's like what I always say, that Mark lived it so we could all feel it. You know, so coming up with these things to these little ways of kind of doing it, maybe just slightly to kind of get you to that place. But because I remember having that conversation, we're going to do some things that are different because I think it's important to get to a larger group, because if they do feel those feelings, then they'll have the same kind of amazing experience we had going through this, you know.
With all the emotional work, there's also tremendous physical work that needs to be done. Like looking up at this, not only, Dwayne, how did you change your body for this? Talk to us about the prosthetics because they're incredible. You look like yourself, but you don't. You look like Mark, but you don't.
Thank you. The prosthetics were just so invaluable. There were 22 prosthetics every day over the course of about 3.5 to 4 hours every day. There was the hair, of course, which was fun for me. But the physical transformation was hard because it was over 30 pounds that I had to put on of muscle. And what you realize quickly when Benny came to me and said, hey, it's a funny story. He goes, hey, I don't know if you've ever been told this, but you're gonna have to get bigger. Hey, I've never been told that. But, give me 24 hours, let me get back to it. I thought about it, and then we watched videos of Mark, and you know, at one time when Mark was the greatest fighter on the planet, as you guys have seen, real footage, he was this rare anomaly of a human being with his body, and Mark had a different quality of muscle to him because he was a wrestler, and so there's a fast twitch muscle that I realized I had to put on in the course of about 5 to 6 months of over 30 pounds. And I also still had to move, so I had to be agile as best I could to be an MMA fighter. So there was a physical transformation, there was the vocal transformation, and as I learned, as you guys know, you know, Mark, he's so soft-spoken, he's so tender, and there's this beautiful, almost like childlike curiosity in his voice when he speaks and when he talks, when he asks questions, when he's just curious and querying anything. So there was a vocal transformation. And the biggest one, I think, was just the emotional transformation of a guy who was at one time the greatest in the world, and he, like so many, got challenged by his demons. And he, as Mark has shared this, so I'm not sharing anything that no one knows, he overdosed twice. And he's lucky to be alive. And I always say there was the Mark Kerr that I needed to know back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then there was Mark Kerr I needed to know today. who sits in front of you today. So of all the transformations I was lucky enough to participate in and do, I think the emotional transformation was the thing that really rocked me to the core, because you realize, and this is Benny's vision, where, hey, and this is also, I think, a testament to Benny's confidence in what he's going to deliver to you guys, about you guys experiencing the same thing that Mark was experiencing, which is this guy had it all. He lost everything at one point, but he's okay. And everyone's okay. And there's the lesson to be learned, that it can be okay. And that's to Benny. And by the way, I always like saying this because it's important. It was my honor to transform for Benny, because it was your vision.
It was an amazing thing to watch, because at some point I really felt like I could ask you to do anything, you know? I was at one point, we were filming, and he said, "You're just on my back." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay."
After Mark loses that
Yeah.
long shot in the elevator.
And I said, "Whenever you feel that you don't want to be seen anymore, just turn around." And he turns around, but he feels Maceos, the cinematographer, Maceo Bishop, he feels him trying to get around and see his face, and he kind of curls up and blocks the camera so that you can't see him. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a whole other level of, it was like acting with the pores of his body, you know? It was really unbelievable to be a part of, because also the things we would talk about were just conversations about like, what makes you sad? And then to see that internalized and then outwardly put on the screen was really, really special, you know?
You have a lot of other fighters, former fighters, continuing fighters who have supporting roles in the film. You had a lot of great trainers on set. What was it like to share this experience with people just like Mark, who have lived this life, and what kind of feedback were you guys getting from them?
It's some of the best, because that was one of the things that I really wanted to do, was really do right by the beginnings of this sport, because the sport now is so big, but it was built on the backs and the blood of people like Mark, you know, and maybe you don't know about them, but you should, you know. And I'm like, I remember you said something to me, like, I didn't like feeling that like I had been forgotten after doing all this stuff, and I didn't want that for you. So I was like, all right, so part of it was really trying to shine a light on this incredible time and give you guys like a front row seat, ringside seat to this. And part of it was I've had experiences where I became very friendly with like boxing trainers and boxers, and I would see a boxer like fight, and I had really intense feelings when I was connected to the person in the ring, and I knew them, I knew everything they'd been through. And so that was always in my head of like, oh, well, that makes it that much more exciting, because you really care about what's going to happen. Win or lose, you're invested in it, you know? And having Ryan around, being able to talk to him and say, when you win, 20 minutes later, what's going through your head? You know, now what? You know, you spent all this time working for something. What do you do now?
Loneliest place on the planet.
That's it. That's it.
That's the craziest thing. I told Benny this. I said the crazy thing about it, you get in this mindset of what's next. You can't even sit in that for a minute or a moment. It's the craziest stuff in the world, because it's stuff that's not communicated, because there's no camera there.
Yeah.
You know, there's no camera there. So walking out of the ring, like at the end of the movie when Ryan sits down, Mark sits down and he's there with the belt, that's a lonely place, even though he just accomplished what he accomplished. And it's this crazy thing, because me looking at it going, oh man, I've been there. Because you feel for a second this satisfaction, and then all of a sudden my mind would kick in to go, that's not enough. I need to go get another one. And I need to get another one. It's this restlessness, and it's the thing that drives me, but also it's the thing that drives me to other things. You know, because it's an unsustainable. It's an unsustainable existence, and it's this crazy thing. The two loneliest places on the planet is walking up to the ring and after, no matter what happens. In those moments, it's just you.
I'm going to ask the last question. I'm going to give it to Mark. What was it like to see this for the first time?
Oh gosh, so I saw it for the first time this year in January, and Benny, it was with Benny and my older brother, Michael, and small little studio and movie theater in California, and I sat down and, trying to go into something like this with no expectations, just trying to go in and just be as open and I don't know, probably 5 minutes into it, I literally was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be just an emotional roller coaster for me to sit through. And, seeing DJ do what he did was just, it still to this day, it's just like, I don't know how I got my mannerisms. I still don't know how he walked like
He watched you like a psychopath for months.
I'm stalking you, Mark. I'm coming. It's like one of those things. So seeing it for the first time, it was, I get done, I get up, watching it, and I stand up and I'm crying, and Benny gives me a big hug, and he's crying, my brother, it's like behind me, we're like, come on in here, and we're all hugging, and I look up out of, no one tells me this. I look up out of the corner of my eye, and there's DJ, and there's Emily. They snuck in the back of the theater. And we sit down in the movie theater, and we have this like hour-long just conversation, and it was this connection, and I would talk about moments during the movie, and DJ would start crying, and I would start crying. I mean, even to the point where Emily had to call us wet skirts and say, hey, listen, just, because it's emotionally overrun, and the amount of passion and everything that everybody put into this to make it as authentic as possible, just absolutely just was incredible. It was more than I could ever expect or anticipate or ever want. And, it turned out to be this just, all the way to this point, just this incredible experience with the only people on the planet I feel that could have made it the way they made it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for staying and getting that tonight. Tell your family, tell your friends. Thank you all for staying. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thank
Emily.
you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.